Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into something pretty wild today.
Yeah, should be fun.
Okay, so have you ever felt like your memory's kind of playing tricks on you? Like maybe that awesome vacation you had as a kid
Mm-hmm.
wasn't quite as sunny as you remember it, or that big argument you had with someone, maybe it didn't go down exactly how you thought it did?
Right.
Today, well, we're going to be going deep into the world of memory and how, well, it's not as straightforward as we might think.
It's true.
So you guys shared some really interesting excerpts um, on this experiment, the War of the Ghosts experiment by Frederick Bartlett.
Yeah,
And let me tell you, this research is from way back, like the 1930s,
that's right.
but it's still making waves in how we think about memory. And what's really fascinating to me is how much this matters now, right?
Yeah.
In our world, we're just bombarded with information constantly.
Absolutely.
News, different opinions, everybody's got their own narrative.
It's so true.
So how reliable are our memories, really?
Uh-huh.
And how much can they change?
Well, it's fascinating because back when Bartlett was doing this research, memory was generally viewed as this passive process.
Right.
We just store information and retrieve it.
Like a filing cabinet.
Almost like a mental filing cabinet.
Yeah.
And Bartlett, he really challenged that. He said
Mhm.
that memory, it's a lot more dynamic.
Okay.
It's an active reconstruction that's constantly being shaped and reshaped.
Pretty shaped.
Yeah, by our experiences, by our beliefs, and by our cultural backgrounds.
Okay, so then let's break down this whole idea of active reconstruction.
Sure.
What did Bartlett actually do to kind of prove this theory?
Well, he designed this very clever experiment. He used a story
Okay.
called The War of the Ghosts.
The War of the Ghosts.
Yeah, and it was a Native American tale.
Hmm.
And now this story was chosen very deliberately.
Yep.
He specifically chose a story that would be unfamiliar to his participants,
Right.
who were British students at the time. It had themes and elements that really clashed with their typical Western worldview.
So like what? Like give me an example.
Shamanic journeys, encounters with spirits.
Oh, interesting.
A logic that wasn't quite linear.
Okay.
He wanted to see how this unfamiliar narrative would be remembered,
Okay.
and how it would transform over time.
Okay, so the story was like kind of out there.
Yeah, it was unfamiliar.
Right, deliberately so.
Yes.
Okay. So how did the experiment work?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, did people just like read the story and then try to write down what they remembered?
Not exactly. He used this technique called serial reproduction.
Serial reproduction, okay.
So imagine a game of telephone, right?
Right.
But instead of whispering a phrase, they're retelling a whole story.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so participants, they would read the story once, and then as time passed,
Right.
they'd be asked to retell it from memory. And sometimes this would be days later, sometimes weeks, even years later.
Whoa. Really?
Yeah.
So over the course of years, he would like check back in and say, okay, tell me the story again.
Exactly.
Wow, okay. And with each retelling, the story would, shift a little bit more? Wait,
No.
hold on. So the stories like actually changed.
They did.
Okay, and what kind of changes are we talking about?
Oh, they were significant. And remember, this isn't just forgetting minor details.
Okay.
It was a systematic shift in the entire narrative.
Wow.
So, for example, the ghosts that were central to the original story,
Right.
they would become more concrete, less supernatural.
Mm.
And some participants, they even reinterpreted them as just ordinary people.
Wow, that's pretty wild. So they basically were rewriting the entire story to fit something that felt more comfortable to them.
Exactly. It wasn't just the supernatural elements either, deaths in the story.
Right.
They were often transformed into injuries,
Right.
something more familiar, less unsettling.
Okay.
The whole story became shorter, more coherent, more digestible, almost as if it were trying to fit neatly into their existing worldview.
So what surprised Bartlett the most about these results? I mean, was he expecting this level of transformation?
What really struck him was the consistency of these changes. It wasn't random,
Right.
There were clear patterns in how the story was being reshaped.
Right.
And Bartlett, he realized that memory isn't like a video recording,
Okay.
faithfully capturing an event.
Yeah.
It's more like a constantly rewritten story, where we unconsciously fill in gaps, smooth over inconsistencies.
Right.
We essentially make the past fit our present understanding.
Whoa. So instead of remembering things objectively, we're actually reconstructing them based on, well, our own biases, our own experiences.
Yeah.
That's kind of unsettling, isn't it?
It definitely challenges our assumptions about how memory works, and this is where it gets even more intriguing.
Okay.
Bartlett also found that our cultural and societal norms play a huge role in how we shape these memories.
So let's unpack that a little. How does culture, come into all of this?
Well, think about it. The British students in Bartlett's study, right?
Yeah,
They were trying to make sense of a story deeply rooted in a culture very different from their own.
right. Very different.
And they unconsciously translated the narrative to fit their own cultural framework,
Yeah.
their own understanding of how stories should be.
Okay.
So this cultural lens, if you will, acts as a powerful filter.
Okay.
It shapes our memories, even influences what we choose to remember in the first place.
Yeah. So it's not just, our individual experiences, but also this broader cultural context is sort of coloring how we remember things.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a lot to take in.
It is.
Before we, jump into what all of this means, I'm curious, what's your initial reaction to all of this? What stands out to you the most so far?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts, too.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing, isn't it?
it is. Yeah.
To think that maybe even our most cherished memories might not be as accurate as we believe.
I mean, honestly, it is kind of mind-bending. Even, my most cherished memories, they might not be as accurate as I think they are. If our memories are always being rewritten like this,
Right.
how can we even be sure of anything, really?
Well, that's a great question, and it's one that researchers have, been grappling with for decades.
Yeah.
The thing is, even though our memories, they might be a little fuzzy on the details and susceptible to, change over time,
Okay.
they still form the foundation of who we are.
So even though, the specifics might be a bit fluid, the core essence of our experiences and our values and our beliefs, that stuff stays pretty stable.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's like, think of it like a river.
Okay.
The water is always flowing and changing, right?
Right.
But the riverbed, the underlying structure, that remains largely intact.
Okay.
So our memories, they're the flowing water, always in motion. But our sense of self, our identity, that's the riverbed,
Okay.
providing that sense of continuity and grounding.
That's a great analogy. It helps to kind of make sense of this whole malleability thing.
Mm.
But then how do we know what to trust? How do we figure out, what's a genuine memory and what's one of these kind of reconstructed memories?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's no easy answer.
Okay.
Bartlett's research, it really highlights the inherent subjectivity of memory.
Okay.
It's a reminder that we should always be critical of our own memories, especially when it comes to making important decisions or judgments.
So you're saying we should just be, skeptical of everything we remember?
Well, not necessarily skeptical, but certainly aware of the potential for bias.
Okay.
Think about it. Our memories are shaped by our emotions, our beliefs,
Right.
our cultural background, even the way we frame questions to ourselves.
Mm.
All of these factors can influence how we recall and interpret past events.
Okay, but if we can't fully trust our own memories, how are we even supposed to, navigate the world? Especially
Yeah.
now, like you said, we're in this information age where we're just hit with all this news and opinions and conflicting narratives all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels like a recipe for confusion, honestly.
Yeah, I understand your concern.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, right, by
Yeah.
the sheer volume of information that we
Yeah.
encounter every single day. But here's the thing. Understanding the malleability of memory isn't about becoming paralyzed by doubt.
Uh-huh.
It's about empowering ourselves to be more discerning, more critical thinkers.
So instead of seeing this as a weakness, maybe it's actually a strength. It kind of forces us to question our assumptions and to seek out different perspectives and be more open to the possibility that, we don't have the whole picture.
Exactly. If our memories were completely fixed,
Yeah.
we'd be stuck with outdated information, unable to learn from our mistakes, or adapt to changing circumstances. So
Right.
this flexibility, it's actually essential for our survival and our ability to, thrive in a complex world that's always changing.
Okay, I'm starting to see the upside here.
Yeah.
But let's get practical for a minute. How can we actually apply this in our everyday lives?
Well, for one thing, we can start by being more mindful of the sources of information we rely on.
Okay.
Right. Are we getting our news from a variety of sources, or are we stuck in an echo chamber?
Mm-hmm.
That only reinforces our existing beliefs. Are we questioning the information that we encounter, or are we just blindly accepting it as truth?
Yeah.
I mean, these are important questions to ask, especially in the age of social media where, misinformation can spread so quickly.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's almost like we need to develop a healthy skepticism, not just about our own memories, but also about the information that we're getting from the outside world.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And the skepticism shouldn't be seen as, cynicism or negativity. It's about being curious,
So,
being open to new information, and being willing to update our understanding of the world as we learn and grow.
so what you're saying is, like, instead of getting bogged down and trying to figure out, like, what's real and what's not,
Right.
we should just focus on, like, being more critical,
Right.
having a more nuanced approach to information and memory.
Precisely. It's about recognizing the limitations of memory
So,
without, falling into complete skepticism. It's about finding that balance
yeah.
between acknowledging the subjectivity of our experiences and striving for a more informed, well-rounded understanding of the world.
That makes a lot of sense. But I got to admit, there's still a part of me that feels a little uneasy about all of this.
Mhm.
Like, if our memories are so easily influenced, what does it even say about our sense of self? Like, are we all just a collection of, constantly shifting narratives?
Well, that's a profound question, and one that philosophers and psychologists, they've been debating for centuries.
Yeah.
But here's a thought.
Okay.
Even though our individual memories might be fluid and subject to change, our shared memories,
Oh, yeah.
our collective narratives, they can provide a sense of stability and continuity.
Okay, what do you mean by shared memories? Like, are you talking about things like family history
Yes,
or like cultural traditions?
exactly.
Okay.
These shared narratives, whether they're passed down through generations or shared within a community, they help to shape our understanding of who we are and where we belong.
Hmm.
They give us a sense of rootedness and connection, even as our individual memories might be in flux.
That's an interesting perspective. So even though our personal memories might be a little, well, unreliable,
Mm-hmm.
these shared narratives, they can act as a kind of anchor, right?
Yeah.
They're grounding us in a larger story that goes beyond our individual experiences.
Precisely. And it's not just about historical events or cultural traditions, right? It's also about the stories we tell ourselves about our own lives.
Oh,
The
no.
way we frame our past experiences,
Hmm.
the meaning that we ascribe to them, can shape our present and future in very powerful ways.
So even though, like, the details of our memories might be a bit fuzzy,
Hmm.
the way we interpret those memories and how we weave them into a larger narrative,
Yeah.
that can have a big impact on who we become.
Absolutely. It's not just about what happened.
Right.
It's about how we make sense of what happened.
Okay.
And that sense-making process, it's constantly evolving as we encounter new information, new perspectives, new experiences.
This is all giving me a lot to think about, but I got to ask, what about those situations where our memories, they just clash with someone else's?
Yeah.
Like, let's say two people see the same thing happen,
Yeah.
but they remember it totally differently. How do we even begin to, like, reconcile those differences?
That's a great question. And it's one that often comes up in, legal proceedings or historical debates, even personal relationships. The thing is, just because two people remember something differently, it doesn't necessarily mean that one person is lying or being intentionally deceptive.
Yeah.
It could simply be a matter of perspective, interpretation, or even just, the way our brains process and store information.
So instead of just assuming that someone's, being dishonest,
Right.
we should consider the possibility that their memory of the event is genuinely different from ours.
Exactly. It's about approaching these discrepancies with a sense of curiosity and understanding,
Right.
rather than judgment or accusation. And it's also about recognizing that memory isn't always about finding the truth.
Okay.
Sometimes it's about understanding the different perspectives and interpretations that shape our individual and collective realities.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a good reminder that even though we might, like, feel really strongly about our own memories,
Right.
there's always room for nuance
Mm-hmm.
and a chance that other people's perspectives, well, they might be valid too.
It's a humbling realization, isn't it?
Yeah.
That even when we're convinced we're right, our memories could be, playing tricks on us.
Definitely makes you think twice about, like, all those arguments where everyone's so sure that they're remembering things the right way.
Exactly.
And that makes me think about things like eyewitness testimony.
Right.
For so long, that was like, the gold standard in legal cases.
Absolutely.
But now, thanks to research like Bartlett's, we're starting to understand how easily those eyewitness accounts can be, well, influenced, right?
Yeah.
By stress or suggestion or even just the way questions are asked.
It's true.
Yeah, pretty eye-opening to think that something as important as, someone's freedom
Right.
could be based on a memory that, well, might not even be completely accurate.
It's a sobering thought,
It is.
and it really highlights how important it is to have, safeguards in the legal system
Right.
to account for the fact that human memory, well, it's fallible.
Absolutely. But let's change gears for a second.
Yeah.
We've talked about all the, potential downsides of having a malleable memory. But is there like another side to this coin?
Yeah.
Doesn't this flexibility also make memory incredibly adaptable?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Think about it. If our memories were, fixed,
Unchanging.
unchanging,
Okay.
we'd be stuck with all this outdated information,
Right.
unable to, learn from our mistakes or adapt to new situations.
Right.
The very thing that makes memory susceptible to distortion,
Yeah.
that also allows us to grow, to change our perspectives,
Right.
to integrate new knowledge into our understanding of the world.
So instead of seeing this like malleability as a weakness,
Right.
maybe we could see it as a strength, like, a sign of how amazing our brains are,
Yeah.
to
Well,
adapt and evolve.
Exactly. It reflects our cognitive flexibility. I mean, imagine if we couldn't update our memories at all. We'd be stuck in the past,
Yeah.
unable to learn from new experiences or change our minds when we get new information.
Wow, that's actually a really profound thought.
It is.
So it's almost like this malleability is essential, not just for our own personal growth, but also for us to be able to function well in a world that's constantly changing.
I couldn't agree more. It allows us to learn from our mistakes,
Right.
to update our beliefs,
Right.
to navigate all the complexities of life with, more nuance and understanding.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
We've covered so much today,
We have.
from how memory actually works to what it means for our justice system, our relationships, even our own sense of self.
Absolutely.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
I know, right?
There's so much more to, explore when it comes to the human mind and how our memories shape, well, everything really.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners who are, totally fascinated by all this memory stuff now, where would you suggest they, go to learn more?
Well, Bartlett's original work, it's called Remembering.
Remembering.
That's a great place to start.
Okay.
Though it is, it can be a bit dense. There are also tons of books and articles on the latest research,
Right.
as well as some really fascinating podcasts and documentaries that really delve into the complexities of the human mind.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me today is to, stay curious, be open to new perspectives, and to never stop questioning the world around us.
It's true.
And that includes our own memories.
Well said. Because as Bartlett so brilliantly showed us,
Yeah.
the journey of understanding memory, well, it's really a journey of understanding ourselves.
That's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us on this, exploration of memory and how it can change. We'll see you next time for another fascinating dive into the world of knowledge and ideas.